Last time I talked to Christine Hodge, she was just a contestant on MasterChef. A few months later, she is the winner. How's that title just sound, MasterChef winner? How are you taking that title in so far, Christine?
It's funny. I've known for a while, obviously, because filming wrapped a few months before the show started airing. But I've kept mum about it. But having it, I think, unwrapped before all of the nation, and it's still kind of reliving the experience. So definitely there's been an outpouring of support from fans, and it's been good. It's overwhelming a little bit, and a very bizarre paradigm shift, I think, for myself. But I think all in all, it's been very positive.
Now, saying that, I guess just how hard was it? I know there's reasons you can't tell anybody, but how hard was it just to keep that mum and not tell anybody, even though you knew for that long?
That's funny. A lot of people have asked me that, and surprisingly, it was not that difficult for me. I didn't have an issue. I think I'm probably good at keeping secrets, so I think that's why I have some pretty good friends that like to confide in me. But it really wasn't that hard, and not even my own father knew. He watched alongside everyone else and found out along with the rest of America.
Now, I know you can't sit next to him like, hey, since you won, but when they have the eliminations, you can be like, oh, I guess I'm not up for the chopping block tonight. You can't ruin the secret for everybody else.
Exactly.
Now, just before some of our listeners or some of our viewers who may not be familiar with the show MasterChef, it's kind of like not necessarily a spin-off, but Gordon Ramsay from Hell's Kitchen, if you're familiar with that show, he's also featured on this show as one of the judges. And Christine, you were the first blind contestant in the history of MasterChef. And just give the audience a little bit back on your background story, because you weren't always a chef. It kind of started out from necessity, am I right, just living in a college dorm?
Yes, exactly. That's correct. I went off to college and really didn't know how to cook anything except for instant ramen and frozen pizza and scrambled eggs and toast. And out of necessity, once I left the dorms and had my own apartment, I had a small kitchen, and I knew I had to learn to feed myself since I couldn't possibly keep eating fast food. So that's how it started. I just bought a few cookbooks from a secondhand bookstore and just started learning by following recipes. And once I sort of felt like I could understand a little bit about certain ingredients and then different techniques, I think it just sort of expanded from there. Okay,
and I guess just when they're just saying that, I guess just going off of that. Now, when you've not always been blind or had vision loss. Just coping with that in cooking, I guess, how did you just learn? What are some of your ways to get around the kitchen?
I think, I just took baby steps to gradually get myself back in the kitchen, and I've learned that I have to be a lot more organized to cook and to do anything, really. I think once you lose your vision, organization becomes such a much more important factor in your everyday living. So it's about, organizing the spice rack. I recently learned Braille, so I haven't done it yet because I have my whole spice rack memorized alphabetically, but, I will be putting Braille labels on top of the spice jars. It's knowing exactly how my knives are lined up, all the blades are facing the right way, and I know, to the left is my bread knife, then my meat cleaver, then chef's knife, utility knife, paring knife, et cetera, et cetera. So everything is just very organized in there. And also, I think you just learn to rely on all of your other senses because cooking is such a sensual experience. It involves all of the senses. So when you lose your vision, obviously your other senses, you become much more aware of your other senses and in tune with those other senses.
Now, since you said organization is one of the key things, and when you're blind or have vision loss, organization is one of the key factors in keeping you going and making things easier for you. Now, during the competition, your organization isn't the same because you're going around kind of what the show has put in front of you. Now, how did that just affect you? Were there any bumps, and I guess along the road, just with organization during a competition, that kind of made things difficult for you?
Yes, that is also something that's a very accurate observation. Being under that sort of time pressure in an environment that I did not know provided a lot of difficulties, I think, for myself. I think it obviously helped that the show provided me someone that acted as my eyes and my legs on the show. So, if I would fumble and lose my ladle, which happened often, I would ask her, please help me find the ladle, and she would place my hand on top of, wherever I placed the ladle. So organization did kind of fall by the wayside when I was at the competition. But I tried my best, but I think in those moments when you're doing things that are asked of you that you've never done before in an environment you're not familiar with, under a time crunch, I think you just become really flustered. So as a vision-impaired person, that presented huge challenges for me.
Now, I know on the show, last time we talked about the breakthrough moment, I guess, with the apple pie, and we mentioned that. I guess just in the show, now that we know you won, I guess, what was the moment during the process or during the tapings or during that time period that you started to believe, hey, I can win this thing?
I think once I got into maybe top 4 or top 5, I felt like it was so close that I could almost smell it. So I knew, getting into top 5, I knew that competition would be really cutthroat and tough, and everyone that gets into the top 5, it's a 20% chance of getting that title. So I knew we all wanted it so badly, and I knew I was so close. And so I think just with each successful challenge following that, I felt like I was just getting closer and closer. And not that I ever felt completely confident that I would win, because I'm the kind of person that hopes for the best but expects the worst. So every time I went into that kitchen, I would always kind of set myself up to expect failure, just so I can prepare myself for that sort of disappointment. But I think, with every subsequent challenge that I went in there and succeeded at, I think I got closer, and I felt more confident, and felt like, I had one hand on that prize, and I was getting closer and closer.
Now, going to the final competition, now what led to your choice in picking that particular dish to make for the final competition?
So for the finale, I knew that I wanted to sort of pay a tribute to my mom. And braised pork belly is something that I grew up eating, that she made a lot. And so I knew for sure that I wanted my main dish to be that particular dish to pay tribute to her. And so I sort of modeled my appetizer and my dessert around that, thinking that, okay, I wanted to make a cohesive menu because I felt like that was important. I think when you go into certain restaurants and if you let the chef take the lead, you expect the chef to know how to lead you through one course to the next, and the flow of it is very important. So I wanted to keep the menu cohesive, and so I felt like the flavors should be similar. So I used a lot of Southeast Asian flavors, and because braised pork belly is something that's a heavier, very rich and fatty dish, I knew that I wanted the first and last course to be something lighter. So I kind of took the menu full circle, and that's how I came up with the Thai-inspired papaya salad and the coconut lime sorbet for dessert.
Now, was there any, I guess, bumps along the road in that final competition that kind of, you're like, uh-oh, I may be in trouble here?
Yes, in the finale, which I don't think they really showed or touched much upon, I had this Japanese spiral slicer that helped me turn cucumbers and certain vegetables into linguine-type or linguine-shaped noodle type thing. So, Joe Bastianich, when he eats it, he says it reminds me of linguine because I pushed these vegetables through a Japanese spiral slicer, but the tool was malfunctioning during the finale. So, and also even with my mandolin slicer, my blades were not put in correctly. And so I had issues with a lot of equipment, and I had to actually change up some of my dishes at the very last minute, just because at game time, like if something wasn't working, I had to kind of improv that dish. So it was flustering and frustrating, but I know that it helps to show that you can think under pressure, and you can be willing to change under certain circumstances. So, and not fall apart when things don't go your way. So those are things that I ran into during the finale that I thought could have cost me the title.
I guess just what was the nervousness level going into that final competition? Was it just like, hey, this is like every other show, or did you feel the added pressure with this being the final competition?
Of course, I felt the much added pressure of it being the final competition. I think every day I go in there and feel that pressure because the challenges get more difficult and you just get closer to the title, and you want it more and more badly. So with, me being in the top two, the pressure and the stakes were very high. So I think there were a lot of nerves going into that day. I know that I don't think I've slept very much the night before. I was going over my menu in my head over and over while I was lying in bed trying to sleep. And but going into that, that final competition, I think I just tried to stay focused and not really worry about all the butterflies in my stomach, but just try to perform and execute to the best of my ability and follow through and learn to roll with the punches if things don't go as planned.
Now, I know we talked to you about getting used to the title of MasterChef Season 3 winner. Now, I know you're getting used to that title, but you knew, like, even though your initial reaction when you won, when you got done completing the most important meal you probably ever have cooked, I guess, what was your just initial reaction when you first won?
My initial reaction was just utter shock and disbelief, and seriously felt like I was just floating, and it was just I can't really even explain it. Just thinking about it now, it just gives me chills down my spine, because it was just something that I could not believe that I achieved and accomplished. And it was just an amazing moment, and it almost felt like an out-of-body experience, but it was just pure shock, and I think happiness and joy at the same time. And I know that I felt that winner's high for at least 48 hours following that. I don't think it really sunk in until 3 days after it was announced. And it's still, now that it's been 3 weeks since it's aired, it's still sort of, it's sunken in, but it's still sometimes a surreal feeling.
Now, I know I know you said organization is a very key part, and in your life in the kitchen and things of that nature. Now, I know with winning a contest, some of that organization's been thrown out the window. I know you got new fans, new notoriety. I guess, how's it just taking on all that information, all that stuff going on too as well?
That's been pretty overwhelming in a very positive way, but at the same time, it is overwhelming. And like I tell a lot of people, even if it's good change is still stressful. Even when it is a good change in your life, but any kind of change is stressful because I am a person usually of routine or exactly what you're saying about organization and knowing what my day will be like, what tomorrow will be like, what next week will be like. But with this sudden, lift into this position, I think it's been definitely an overwhelming experience. I think it's crazy to just leave the house and have people recognize me in the grocery store or at Target, doing very ordinary things that I've always done. But I'm always thinking like, oh gosh, are they looking at my shopping cart and, judging me on what stuff I'm buying and all of that sort of complexes have kind of like surfaced in my mind. But for the most part, everyone's been very positive, and it's really rewarding to hear people that come up to me and say that I've been inspiring or that I've helped them in some way and that they've enjoyed watching me, that they're fans, they're waiting for my cookbook. All those sorts of positive reactions makes everything really worthwhile. Now
the show being over, I'm going to ask you a couple questions. I just want you to kind of reflect on some things. Now, with the judges, everybody knows Gordon, but the other judges as well. What are some things that you kind of just take from, that you will continue to take from them along your journey in cooking?
I think that their style of judging us, they are harsh when we deserve it, when we don't perform at our best, and they are also very nurturing, and they will lavish praise if our food deserves it as well. So I think, if anything, I've learned from them, especially to me personally, is, they've built up my confidence in a certain way that I didn't have, a confidence I didn't have when I first came on the show. And I think they got rid of a lot of self-doubt that I had. And I wouldn't say that I've gotten rid of all my self-doubt. I'm not overly confident or cocky or anything like that at all. But I think I've learned to sort of trust my intuition a lot more, whether it's with cooking or with any other decision I make in life. And I think they've taught me to be more intuitive and trust those sorts of gut instincts and just believe in myself and realize that if my opinion or my thought process is different from the person next to me, as long as I can back it up somehow, then it's okay. Not everyone has to agree. Everyone can agree to disagree.
Now, if there's one meal, one moment in the show you could take back, even though you won, what would be that moment or meal or dish or whatever?
I think it would definitely have to be the elimination round where I was teamed up with Stacy and we had to recreate the Japanese platter. I think I would go about it doing it differently and not spend so much time on trying to get the fish cut perfectly, and so we left no time for the end to make the rolls or the sauces. I think that would have been something I would have done differently.
Now, also one last thing, I guess, is Gordon as scary, as intimidating as he's made out to be, or was it?
I think only when you screw up. But I think, no, for the most part, Chef Ramsay is a very charismatic person, and a lot of people do ask me that. That's like a lot of the first questions I get. But he's very charming, and he always has us laughing, and he has this just great, incredible energy about him. He can come into a room when all of us are half asleep and half like dead from being just so exhausted, and he can just make a few jokes and say a few words to us, and we would all just have smiles on our faces, be laughing, and just feel more awake. So, he has this very positive energy about him, and I think, in all honesty, he's been a very good mentor to all of us.
I guess last question I'm going to ask you, just going back to the show, I guess, what was your defining moment on the show for you?
Oh, geez, my defining moment. I guess it sounds probably cliche, but I think with the apple pie challenge, when I really felt like that was my day to go home, and I could not see how my apple pie looked at all, even when everyone else that could see in that kitchen was saying, Christine, your pie looks beautiful. The only person's pie that looks better than yours is Felix's. But I still had such incredible doubt about how my pie turned out. And then when the judges complimented me on it, I think it was sort of like a small light that kind of turned on inside me. And I was starting to realize that, hey, maybe I can do this. And not to say that there weren't a lot of bumps in the road after that, and not to say that I didn't have any self-doubt after that, but I think it was that moment where it kind of clicked inside me that maybe I need to believe in myself more.
Definitely. Now, one of the things that happened is from you winning MasterChef is a cookbook. Tell us a little bit more about that. I guess what can we expect to see in the cookbook?
Yeah, so the prize that I actually looked the most forward to was the cookbook deal, because I'm a writer, so naturally food and words are two things I love, and what better way to marry those two different things than in a cookbook. So right now I recently met with the publishing house and an editor that will help me put together my cookbook, and it's slated to hit the bookshelves, I believe, in May of 2013. I'm just starting to conceptualize the cookbook right now, the narrative behind it, the recipes I want to put into it. So I need time to test those recipes as well and just sort of structure that book. And so it'll take a little bit of time to put together, but that's supposed to come out in the spring. But if people can't wait, there's currently the MasterChef Ultimate Cookbook, which has already been on bookshelves, and that contains a few of the recipes that I've cooked on the show, as well as recipes from the top 18 contestants from this season, and even some contestants from the past season have recipes in there. So if people can't wait that long and need certain recipes, that book is definitely already out on bookshelves.
Now, in your cookbook, one more note I just want to ask, I guess, are you going to, what kind of personal touches are going to be in your cookbook that may differ from other cookbooks out there that you're just going to add to make it actually a Christine Ha's cookbook? What are you going to do?
I think that because I really relate to comfort food, I think a lot of my recipes will be about comfort food. So it's about taking things that bring forth certain emotions when people eat it, whether it reminds them of childhood. Obviously, for me, it'll remind me of certain memories. A lot of that, those sorts of recipes will make it into my cookbook. And I think I'm about, experimenting, but at the same time taking ingredients that are not that expensive and not that exotic and elevating it to flavors that make it really delicious. And I think that's the sort of cooking I enjoy, and that's the food I enjoy eating most. So that's the sort of, cuisine that I would have in my cookbook. And at the same time, since I'm a writer, I do want to have a narrative that kind of flows throughout the cookbook that explains what each recipe means to me and also it'll talk about how my journey from how I, didn't know how to cook at all going into college, and to why I started loving food and why cooking became a part of my life, and then leading to where I am today. So that's sort of a narrative journey I also want to put in the cookbook.
Now, after the cookbook and beyond that, I guess, what are some other goals you have now?
So I'm still trying to graduate school. So I tell people that in addition to being a master chef, I still want to become a master of fine arts. So I'm, working on attaining that degree in creative writing. And my thesis will be a memoir. And I think it's, in my life, it's definitely of public interest. And I was working on a memoir even before I went to tape the show. So it's something that I'm continuing to do anyway. So my memoir won't really touch upon cooking, but it'll touch upon the other aspects of my life, like my diagnosis with my autoimmune condition, my vision loss, how I dealt with those sorts of struggles, and also it'll tie into the story of my mom, who died of cancer when I was a teenager, and it sort of chronicles our struggles with our health and those challenges that we've dealt with in our lives. So that's my memoir. So I'm hoping to work on that as well and graduate in May, around the same time that my cookbook will be coming out, and hopefully within a year or so after that, publish the memoir as well. And food-wise, I'm hoping that I can put together a business plan, and if I find the right investors and partners, I can open up an ice cream shop and a gastropub, which are two things that I've been thinking about for a long time that I would want to venture into.
Okay. Yeah, I've read a little about that, something about that on the internet. You said something about creative ice cream flavors.
Exactly.
Now, I guess what was an example of creative ice cream flavor that you just have off the top of your head that no one's ever heard of?
Well, I wouldn't say no one's ever heard of them now, but it's taking ingredients that you wouldn't normally think would be in ice cream, okay, maybe like more savory ingredients, and then putting them into ice cream. But, there's something that I've perfected, I think, is honey lavender ice cream. And that's not something that no one has ever heard of, but, lavender is not something I would say a lot of home cooks deal with.
Yeah.
But it's putting honey lavender together and making ice cream out of that. Or I would say brown butter ice cream. So you're browning butter in a pan, and then you make that into ice cream, or caramel bacon ice cream. Or I still want to experiment with a lot of different things. Like I want to try to make things, see if I can figure out a way to put curry into ice cream. I mean, I'm sure it's going to be a lot of botched recipes, but I think if I can pull it off, it could be pretty amazing.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt till you try it. And like I said, some of it, I imagine it will turn out all right. I think like I said, you came this far and done an excellent job on MasterChef and writing and all that stuff. And it seems like you're just going to be busier come May. So
yes.
So I definitely thank you for taking time out. Congratulations once again on your victory on the show. And we look forward to seeing and hearing and tasting more things from Christine Ha in the future.
Thank you so much, Jason. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.